Hi guys, Forgotten Wolf here, and this is Game of Thrones Houses Episode 4, and this time it is on the Barretheons. I'm going to go from the start of this house to Game of Thrones Season 4, so please like, share, and subscribe to want to continue the series, and let's begin. Out of all the houses we have talked about so far, the Barretheons are the newest house, only being founded back during Aegon's conquest, and it was founded by Aegon the Conqueror's half-brother, Orys Baratheon. Aegon sent Orys to take Storm's End, then held by the Storm Kings by being the Durandons. Orys Baratheon defeated the last Storm King, Argilac Durandon, killing him, and this caused Argilla Durandon to hold up in Storm's End, although the guards turned her over. As a part of the peace terms, Orys married Argilla and took the Durandon's words and banner, but the Barretheons now ruled Storm's End. After Aegon's conquests, Roger Baratheon, the new Lord of Storm's End, served as Hand of the King to King Maegor the Cruel, and Roger would marry Alyssa Valerian while fathering two kids, a son named Bormund Baratheon and a daughter named Jocelyn Baratheon, who'd married Prince Aemon Targaryen. And after Roger, it was his son Bormund who would succeed him. And this eventually leads into the Dance of the Dragons, where Lord Boris Baratheon, would surprisingly side with the Greens, even though his father was a supporter of Rhaenyra. But this is mainly thanks to King Aegon, who promised his brother Prince Aemon Targaryen a marriage pact with one of Lord Boris's many daughters. Aemon would die, however, but when Rhaenyra's position in King's Landing was weakened, Lord Boris still decided to side with Aegon and seized King's Landing for the Aegon. But when Lord Boris marched to the Battle of the King's Road, in the battle, Lord Boris was killed. And after the Dance of the Dragons, the Baratheons enjoyed serving the realm in stability and recovering. However, in 237 AC, a while later, Lord Lionel Baratheon promised his daughter to the heir of the throne, Prince Duncan Targaryen, and he was promised to marry Baratheon, but Duncan broke the betrothal and married someone else. This seriously pissed off the Barretheons and would put some resentment for the Targaryens. After Lionel, it was Lord Ormond Baratheon who succeeded him, but during the War of the Nine Penny Kings, Ormond was killed, which meant his son, Lord Steffan Baratheon, now succeeded him. Lord Steffan fathered 3 children, all being sons by the name of Robert Baratheon, who at this point was serving as ward to Lord Jon Arryn in the Vale, Stannis Baratheon, and Renly Baratheon. Lord Steffan and his wife eventually were sent by King Aerys to find a pure Valyrian blood person to marry Aerys' son, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, but as they left Storm's End, a storm hit, and this killed Lord Steffan and his wife. This now meant that Robert Baratheon was now Lord of Storm's End, and he spent his time between the Vale and Storm's End. Robert was great friends with Ned, and when Brandon and Rickard Stark were executed along with Lyanna Stark being kidnapped and raped by Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, Robert started Robert's Rebellion. Eventually, Robert became King Robert, but back to the start of the war, he was defeated in battle and had to march to a town west of King's Landing, which left Storm's End wide open. Lord Mace Tyrell laid siege to Storm's End. And under the command of Storm's End was Stannis Baratheon. Now, losing your family seat is a devastating blow, as it was shown by what happened to Robb Stark after he lost Winterfell. Spoilers. And it would have caused Robert to maybe march home or continue the war, but his allies, mainly the Tullys, might not have joined. But Stannis was barely able to survive and hold out until Ned Stark lifted the siege at the end of the war. Robert Baratheon had to hide in the Battle of the Bells, but eventually came out, but as Ned Stark, Hoster Tully, and Jon Arryn all rescued him, and they began marching to River Run. At River Run, Ned would marry Catelyn Tully, and Jon Arryn would marry Lysa Tully. This would bring the Tullys into the war and set the stage for the Battle of the Trident, which would decide the war. The battle started with no major breaks in each lines, but in the middle of the battlefield across a river, Robert met Rhaegar, and Robert killed Rhaegar with a swing of his warhammer to his chest, killing the prince in one swing. This basically ended the war, and Robert became king a little later. However, when Ned Stark returned from the Tower of Joy, he brought news of Lyanna Stark's passing. This now caused the Hand of the King, Jon Arryn, to seek a new queen for Robert, and he thought the ideal match was Cersei Lannister. Great job, buddy, you fucked up. Robert married Cersei, and the marriage was loveless. I should mention that Robert granted Stannis and Renly seats on the small council, while Stannis was given Storm's End as he needed someone strong to hold the ancient Targaryen stronghold, and Renly was a boy, so Renly was given Storm's End. 3 years after Robert's rebellion, Cersei gave birth to Joffrey Baratheon. Then 4 years after the birth of Joffrey, Greyjoy's rebellion broke out, and the Greyjoys were soundly defeated, with 3 of Balon's sons killed and Theon going to serve as ward to the Starks. During the next 10 years prior to the Game of Thrones show, Cersei would give birth to Princess Marcella Baratheon and Prince Tommen Baratheon. And now moving on to 297 AC and the start of Game of Thrones, Jon Arryn passed away as he was poisoned by Littlefinger and Lysa Arryn, but they made it look like the Lannisters had done it because Jon and Stannis had been investigating the true parentage of Joffrey, Marcella, and Tommen. Stannis fled King's Landing, and the whole court began to move up north to Winterfell, as Robert named Ned Stark Hand of the King and promised Joffrey Baratheon to Sansa Stark. However, in King's Landing, Ned discovered 2 things. The first being Robert's bastard son, Gendry Baratheon, and the second that Joffrey and Marcella and Tommen weren't Robert's kids, but instead the true parents were Cersei and Jaime Lannister. Ned told Cersei he planned to tell Robert the truth, but Cersei arranged for Robert to be killed in a hunting accident. King Robert, the one who overthrew the Targaryens, was dead. Renly then fled King's Landing with the Tyrells, and during the process of that, he married Margaery Tyrell, and eventually, after season 1, Renly crowned himself king, and I'm assuming Storm's End. But back in King's Landing, Joffrey was now king, and he arrested Ned Stark for treason while dismissing Barris and Selmy from the King's Guard. 2 controversial acts. While the whole of the small council and all people of power, including Joffrey's own mother, Cersei, wanted Ned to join the Night's Watch, as now Robb Stark had declared war to free his fathers and sisters, and River Run had joined him, and the Vale could potentially join them next. Joffrey decided to execute Lord Ned Stark. This caused Robb Stark to be crowned king in the north, and in between seasons 1 and 2, Renly, Stannis, and Balon were all killed. Not killed, they were crowned. Sorry for the mistake. They were crowned kings, not killed. Where was I? King Stannis needed more troops in the War of the Five Kings, so he moved to lay siege to Storm's End to kill Renly and take his troops. Stannis and Melisandre produced a shadow baby which killed Renly with the exception of the Tyrells, all of Renly's troops became Stannis's. After this, Stannis named Davos Seaworth his Hand of the King. This set up the Battle of Blackwater Bay between King Stannis and King Joffrey. Tyrion played a huge trick on Stannis, which destroyed a bunch of his fleet, and momentarily losing Davos, although he eventually found his way back to Storm's End. Stannis didn't give up, however, and he took the battlefield with his troops, and Tyrion/the Hound met him. Stannis looked to be beating him, but then Tywin Lannister and the Tyrells met and forced Stannis to retreat. The Tyrells only joined the Tywin and the Lannisters because Tywin promised King Joffrey to marry Margaery Tyrell, and this was accepted, and Stannis was defeated, making his way back to Storm's End. Through the next year of the war, the Iron Throne dealt with Robb Stark, eventually killing him at the Red Wedding. Then, when the war was over, it was time for the wedding of Joffrey Baratheon to Margaery Tyrell. However, at the wedding feast, King Joffrey was poisoned and he died, which meant the cruel boy king and mad the second Mad King was dead, and his younger brother Tommen became king. Tommen was promised to Margaery very quickly, and they would marry a year later after the trial of Tyrion Lannister. Meanwhile, just after Joffrey's death, Sansa Stark escaped King's Landing. As the rumored suspects, why is everyone texting me? The rumored suspects were Sansa and Tyrion. Well, in reality, it was Littlefinger and Olenna Tyrell. And after the murder of King Joffrey, Stannis Baratheon moved up north to defend the wall to A, win the favor of the Northern Lords, B, defend the Watch from the Wildlings. He defeated the Wildlings soundly and planned to make Jon Snow Jon Stark, but this didn't work as Jon Snow was named Lord Commander, which put Stannis in a pickle moving forward. That was so far the history of the Barretheons, and then in the next episode I'll be doing the Targaryens. But if you want more like this, please like, share, and subscribe. And at 100 subscribers, I'll do a 1-hour video on the FNAF Timeline. At 500 likes, I'll do a video on Greyjoy's Rebellion. At 50k views, I'll do a video on the life of Ned Stark. But until next time, bye!